My name is Emmy van Deurzen. I am the principal of a higher education college where I train people in psychotherapy, psychology, counseling, coaching, and pastoral care. I am a professor with Middlesex University, a visiting professor. I have written 15 books that have been translated into about 15, 16 languages. I lecture internationally on all continents and have done so for many decades. I'm well established in the UK, where I own my house, where I have raised a family. I have been in the UK for 40 years. I came to the UK in 1977 and I obtained indefinite leave to remain in 1984, having started paying taxes for 5 years and have carried on working and paying tax evermore since then. I have set up several colleges and training schools and founded organizations. I have employed hundreds of people over the years. I have about 300 students at the moment and have had many thousands over the decades. I have contributed a great deal to British society. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Nevertheless, when about over a year ago, I decided that the time had come for me to apply for British citizenship, having been here for so long and knowing that I would never want to go to any other country again in my life. When I decided to apply, I was quite apprehensive because I was aware of the long process it entailed. And also, of course, I was aware that I would have to take the Life in the UK test. And so I started studying up for that, and I took that in January 2016. All of this in preparation for the dreaded referendum, which I could foresee was going to go the wrong way and might have dire consequences for all of us EU citizens in the UK. I knew this was going to happen as soon as it was announced that we would be deprived of voting in that referendum. All of us EU citizens who are settled in the UK were not given a vote in our own future. We were not allowed to vote in that very important referendum for our lives. The same, of course, was true for all the UK citizens who live elsewhere in the EU. So they too are a very vulnerable group whose lives will be changed tremendously if we leave the EU. So anyway, because I knew this was going to happen, I put in my full application immediately after I got the citizenship test, and this of course involved a great deal of work. I had to get certificates about my PhD at City University because just the certificate of my doctorate wasn't sufficient to exempt me from the language test. So I had to prove how many days I had been out of the country over the last many years, and this involved tracking all my holidays and all my professional foreign engagements and get the exact dates of those. I had to provide 6 years of tax returns and accounts. I had to get references. I had to provide an enormous amount of information on pages and pages of application form, like everybody else, of course. What I didn't quite expect is that my application was rejected very quickly in March, for the strange reason that the government had brought in a new kind of certificate in November 2015, so just months before I applied, which nobody knew about at that time, which was called the permanent residence, the PR certificate. Now, of course, because I had been given indefinite leave to remain from the Home Office itself in 1984, I took the view that it was quite absurd to ask me to go back to square one and ask for a permanent residence certificate, which would not show anything more than what I had already shown. So I explained to the Home Office that I thought the decision was wrong, and I asked for them to reconsider it. Then I didn't hear for a very long time, and I became quite desperate about it, because when I phoned the Home Office, I was told that they had responded to my application within the set standards, and that there was no standard for replying to a request for reconsideration. So at this point, I wrote to my MP, who is Nick Clegg, and he very kindly wrote to the Home Office to ask them to give me a response. I then was rejected again. So at this point, I was completely puzzled and upset, because by this time the referendum had come and gone, and my situation after 40 years in this country seemed very unsettled suddenly and very precarious. So I joined several groups. I joined a group for the 3 million. I set up a group of my own, all this on Facebook. And I also joined New Europeans, who had a very strong voice that was pro-Europe and in support of EU citizens in the UK. And I started battling with them. I also, through these groups, became aware of the AIR Centre, which is a wonderful legal centre in London that supports the plight of EU citizens. And so I got quite a lot of good legal advice, and it became clear to me that the Home Office had indeed made a mistake, and that they should have accepted my application on the strength of my indefinite leave to remain. So I wrote back to the Home Office, despite the fact that I had already been rejected twice, and I was very pleased to find that somebody at the Home Office did enter into a conversation with me about that. So, encouraged by this, I then got the facts completely straight, and I was able to show that there are 4 ways in which you can show that you're settled in the UK, and indefinite leave to remain is one of them. PR, permanent residence, is another one, but it's not the only one. So on the strength of this, I wrote again to Nick Clegg, who then wrote to the Home Office again, and very soon after that I got a phone call from the Home Office, who, to their credit, encouraged me to reactivate my application, to repay the application fee that they had returned to me, in fairness, because I had not had the information about PR having happened in November. So they had a 6-month period in which they did return application fees, but they then encouraged me to pay it again, because they were going to review my application. It then took a little bit longer, with Christmas and the New Year, for me to get a result, but finally yesterday I got a letter from the Home Office stating very clearly that my application for for citizenship has now been accepted, and I will be going to the ceremony at Sheffield Town Hall to become a UK citizen, a British citizen, and to pledge my allegiance to the Queen and country. So this is a story with a happy ending. It is also a story about a lot of pain, uncertainty, and having to battle with a system that for a long time seemed to be deaf to my explanations and to what I think was a very fair application for UK citizenship that has been earned over 40 years and that in fact was rejected quite rudely. So, having been in all these groups with other EU citizens who are in similar or worse situations, I have become very aware of the intolerance and the harsh attitude that we have been experiencing. We are like second-class citizens now in the UK, and it is completely unacceptable. It's totally unnecessary. We are a net asset to the economy, and we have contributed a great deal. In fact, most other Brits are aware of this, and most people want better treatment for EU citizens in the UK. I will continue to campaign until all of my fellow European citizens who are in similar difficulties will have the opportunity to get some easy ways of either obtaining UK British citizenship or PR, permanent residency, if that is what they want. It is not right that the Home Office should be itself so confused about the situation and get into a mix-up about things that are so important and that are based on simple legal decision-making, which should be utterly clear and should be done in a fair-minded way. So, what is the moral of the story? A. Don't allow governments to get so confused that things start to happen in a way that are intolerable and unfair. And when that does happen, speak up and fight for your rights. Pull together with other people. Don't let injustice be done to you, and battle on until common sense prevails. The other moral of the story is that although I feel very worried about this country, I am still very pleased to become one of its citizens and to be able not only to vote for the first time in 40 years in general elections, but also to feel I'm more entitled to make a contribution to a country that has always been so fair-minded and that has always resorted to rationality and proper dialogue about things. We are at some risk of losing this at the moment, and it's very important that we put dialogue, rationality, fair-mindedness and kindness right back at the center of the way this country operates. I hope I am able to make some contribution to that now that I will be a UK citizen. And I hope very much that other EU citizens will take heart from my experience. I know I went through a lot of trouble for this, but it was worth it. I'm glad I did it, and I hope it will all get a lot easier for all of you, because I know you deserve it, and I know you contribute a lot. And I know that most fair-minded British people are right on your side and right behind you, as am I.